things that we're trying to control and the outcomes or results we're trying to get, but we don't know if they'll work out. Like, the unknown doesn't necessarily mean it's going to look like the way you think it's going to look. But if you have the intention, trust that the unknown is going to work out the way it needs to work out. And it's going to be what it needs to be. All you can do with the law of intention is right now, just be who you need to be. This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art. It's podcast time. One of my favorite times. I always come into these with, the best of intentions.
Oh my God. No, this didn't happen.
No, it did. It did.
We always got to start with it. Well, not every time.
Thing. I wasn't.
They call that a dad joke.
But I honestly, I had no intention of coming out with that.
I'm leaving
when I started.
I'm just out of here.
But then it just kind of ended up. It just kind of ended up happening. So hey everybody, we're just gonna move along now. We're just gonna move past that.
Yeah, let's just sweep that under the rug.
We're talking about the law of intention today, and this was like we had such a huge. It's such a huge talk about this before we started this podcast, because we were like, what do we want to talk about? And we were going through some of our laws and some of the stuff we haven't really gotten into, and we're like, yeah, intention, that feels pretty good. And then just like all of these things, as we start to explore them, like how many other laws are related to this one, just how deep these things go, and what we can learn from these laws. And so we've got lots of stuff to start unpacking with this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if we really got to the core of this in our pre-talk, to what we really want to even get to, because in some ways we're still figuring out a few things ourselves with this. But at least I think what people will probably walk away with is a little bit more sense of, motivation, drive, meaning, purpose, little things like that. Because, I mean, basically what we figured out was that intention, this whole law of intention, plays a really big part in not only like what we're doing, but how we're being, and also how we're interpreting what we're doing and how we're being, and how this also like has a much greater effect on the journey or the path that we're on, and how we're experiencing that path, and what we're even capable of doing on that path. So it kind of like, I think we got to kind of help people to kind of at least help ourselves try and figure out how to actually approach this thing. One thing I want to mention just to start it off, and this was, something I think is how maybe most people would probably look at intention, is that I'm here and I want to get there, get that, whatever, like there's some type of place you're trying to get to, or thing you're trying to get, or mission or goal you're trying to accomplish. I want to kind of start by saying, like, that's really the surface of what intention is. We're going to maybe go a lot deeper than that, but I think that's where most of us start. We go like, I want to get there, or I want to get this thing, or I want to achieve that thing.
Yeah.
And we don't always know why we're not able to, or what's in our way, or what's stopping us or blocking us or whatever. And I think by going deeper, you start to root that stuff out. At least it did for me. I mean, I identified a whole bunch of stuff in our pre-talk.
Yeah.
And I'll share a bit of that as we get into it. But like, I think this is where we're all starting from. And law of intention is good for that. I mean, I think one of the things that we can kind of talk about is how the law of intention helps you build the bridge from where you are to where you want to go, or where you want to be, or what you want to get. Like that's part of what it does. But building that bridge requires you go a little bit deeper to actually be able to build the bridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's way more to this than we thought. And like we said, we haven't even really, we know that we're just probably still scratching the surface of this. Like we're really just exploring a lot of these ideas. We've kind of got certain grasps on it, and that's really what we're going to be getting into here.
Yeah, I mean, it's where we're at, right? Like,
and
we're not going to try to pretend to be further
Yeah.
than we are. This is just where we're at. So in some ways, maybe we can take you down a little further down the rabbit hole with us.
Yeah.
And, but these lead into the other laws too. So.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, as a side note, wherever you're at right now is perfect. It's the perfect place to be. It might as well be. Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it's like, I'll just begin this by saying that the power of intention is extraordinary. Like, I've had experiences in my life which, oftentimes I didn't even realize until retrospect how important setting certain intentions were. And I think that this is part of this. One of the things about really making intent. Maybe before we get into this, what are intentions? Like, what are like, they're kind of like goals, but not quite like goals. They're
kind of like a direction. They're kind of like a purpose. They're an intention is like, I mean, it's you intend to do, be, accomplish, get, have, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And intention is kind of like, I see where I want to go, and I see that there's this, like, maybe this gap, and the intention is going, okay, well, I'm here and I want to be or get there or do this. And intention is, it's tied to also a sense of like a result that you might want,
mm-hmm.
and an experience you might want to have in the getting of the result. And intention also has other side things. This is why it's such a big topic, is like, once you get the thing, what do you want to experience? How do you want to be? How do you think you'll be living, like in your purpose and your,
mm-hmm.
So intention is this, because this came out of a conversation actually a little earlier. We were talking about objective in acting,
right.
And how objective, which you identified earlier this week, was like, objective is kind of like a weird way for us to look at life, because it's almost like, I would just put it's almost a bit robotic, or like almost like sociopathic, because like, when you think about it, like, this is my objective, I want to get that. I don't think we're always focusing in a place of objective. We're actually more in a place of like, something is meaningful to us. We have a purpose, we have a why. And so we kind of started to link intention more to the drive or the meaning or the purpose, as opposed to like the objective end result, the
mm-hmm.
goal. Because I think what happens is the law of intention is more powerful when you find more the motivation, the drive, the purpose, the meaning in it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like, so with intentions, I mean, there are kind of, I'm not going to say there's right and wrong ways to do it. There's just, I think that there are just kind of better ways of how we go about setting our intentions. And one of the most important things, though, is that we are consciously making intentions and setting intentions in our life, because it is one of those things that if you're not consciously doing them, you're unconsciously doing them. Like, we are setting intentions all the time, from little things to big things. And I mean, really, I think what we're mostly trying to tackle here is the big things. What are the big intentions that we are, the things that are shaping and giving shape to our lives,
mm-hmm.
right? And being more conscious of what those things are. And this is why it is so tied to like the law of vision, the law of experience, some of like the master laws that we've talked about in the past.
You identified an interesting thing, that the law of intention is kind of always at play.
Yeah.
And I think when we, like, some of these laws, they're not necessarily, I mean, in some ways they're always at play, but some of them, are things that we don't really realize that we're doing. And I think a lot of just identifying the laws, if you've been tuning in for these first episodes of the show, is, I think our main goal is for ourselves and for you, listener, is to help us all become a little more aware of what we're doing and how things are working, and then to be more mindful and also more conscious of this stuff, conscious and mindful. Because I think with intention, it's happening, but the thing is like really the question is how mindful or mindless are of it, and how like conscious or unconscious are of you. Like how is this thing, like, are you aware that you have this intention? And when you're aware, are you actually being mindful about the way you're using your intention? Or are you just kind of going like, oh, whatever, like I want this. I'm not going to think about it. I don't care. And like maybe missing some like nectar in the whole thing of it,
Yeah. Like just kind of like a little example of just like a small intention that you might not necessarily think of as being an intention, like say, you jump out to like scare your friend or something. You're at your house and then like you scare them. You just kind of think it's like, oh, I'm gonna scare them. Well, that's an intention,
right?
It's kind of a trivial intention, but you set out to do this thing and like you go, okay, well that means I'm gonna hide around the corner and I'm gonna wait for them and then I'll jump out and I'm gonna scream and something, and then maybe they get freaked out and maybe they just look at you and they go, you're an idiot, and that's the next kind of like maybe one of the next points to get into with intention is that intention is not really about the result. Intention is that's not really its MO in the whole thing. Intention is really just about setting our own kind of action, setting our own direction to take us into a territory, but we never know what's going to happen. Just like jumping out the friend, whether are they going to be scared or are they not? You don't have control over that thing. You only have control over how you're setting that whole thing up.
Yeah, the activity.
Yeah,
it's so much more about the activity, and I think that's where people
the doing
struggle.
And the being.
Yeah, the doing and the being. The very activity of doing and being is what is putting you in your power state. But when you're in the place of like, I'm doing this to get this result, and you make the thing you're doing or the way you're being based on the result, you put all your power in an outcome or a thing that you aren't necessarily able to control. And it's interesting you bring this up, because this is a great way for us to kind of segue into this whole thing, is that the result, I've learned to look at results as more of a test. Did this work? Did this not work? And, I used to do this all the time when I was a little kid. And because, I don't know, like, it was funny. Like, there was kind of like, my dad was a real big authority figure, but at the same time, I was always kind of encouraged to not just listen to authority, but to think. And so, it's funny because he was very much authority, but I would always challenge him. And I think it created this interesting dynamic with us. But when I was in school, I was in I must have been in grade 1 or grade 2. And the teacher, might even been kindergarten, but the teacher was reading us, she was about to read us a book. And for whatever reason, I'm not really entirely sure, we're all sitting around waiting for her to read this book. And she looks at all of us and she says, okay, I'm about to start. And now, once I start, nobody raise their hand. And I'm just like, but I didn't understand why. Like, why can't we raise our hand? So immediately when she started, I raised my hand. Mostly because I just wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to see what she would do. And the thing is that...
your intention was to stir some shit up.
Right. My intention was to discover, was to learn, was to figure something out.
What would happen?
Yeah, what would happen, right? And when you don't fear consequences, you'll end up a lot of the time doing something. But I think the thing is intention is an interesting thing, because if you are clear on why you're doing something, fear gets kind of out of the equation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And she's like, I just told you not to stick your hand up. And I was just like, I just put my hand down and I was just kind of like, oh, I guess she's going to get aggravated. You know what I mean? But like this, you got to remember, I was obviously now I get that. We all get that. But I was a little kid testing out the world going, I wonder what will happen if I stick up my hand. Oh, the authority figure gets aggravated when you don't do what they say. Interesting. This is just data. But I wasn't like...
this is so revealing to who you are, Brandon. This story that took place many years ago. I'm learning about you all the time.
I started young. Challenge authority.
Yeah. So this thing with intention is like, so how do we go about setting good intentions? Or I guess we can explore setting good intentions and equally the opposite of how you set good ones and what makes kind of setting a bad intention. And one of the big things that we were talking about just before we started was how this whole thing of expectation comes into play with intention, and how setting good intentions, setting powerful intentions, is often so tied into letting go of whatever our expectations are from them. And that we actually, in a paradoxical kind of way, our intentions more easily come into fruition when we let go of the expectation of them.
Yes.
Right? And
that's so key.
And
yeah.
I've had that experience before where I've consciously set an intention for something and then actually had it delivered upon and been, because it wasn't arriving in the way that I had thought it would come about in my own mind, I resisted it. But again, as I was saying, like sometimes it's in retrospect, as you look back, it's like, oh, I totally got what I asked for.
Right.
I totally, be careful what you wish for, right?
Totally.
I think it's always
your cryptic way of relaying great information.
Yeah, no, that's, and I don't mean for it to be cryptic because it's really, because in when we set intentions, like one of the things a big thing that comes into play with it is trust and presence. You set your intention and then you go forth with it. You go, okay, it's been set, here it is. And man, there's so many things that come into play with intention. Like beginning is a huge part of this. Trust is such a huge part of this. Presence, the unknown is a huge part of it.
And vision, yeah.
And vision, like it's all of these things kind of come together.
Well, let me, what you shared a moment ago, you said, I had this intention and I actually got it, but I couldn't recognize it, and I've totally had that too. I'm trying to think of a story, specific story I can share where I've had that exact experience. But, I think this is where the problem where expectation and, things like what we think the outcome should look like become a limitation for us with intention, because intention doesn't say that it will turn out the way you expect or the way you think it should look. But intention is a powerful tool that will often get you what you want. Mm-hmm. But if you can't see that it's giving you what you want, you might get it and not know you're getting it.
Yeah.
And so like for example, you want to build courage. You're like, I want to be more courageous. Well, what if the world gives you something really scary? That happened to me. And so then I'm like getting something that's really scary and I'm overcoming my fear. And I'm like, why the hell is life so hard right now? And it's like, well, you asked for courage. Your intention was to become more courageous. So the world
gave you something like that you're going to need courage.
Yeah. Exactly, right? But you have to recognize that sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for because you get something that might be uncomfortable with intention.
And one of the things we talked about with intention was that intention is a vehicle into the unknown. Right? It's usually when we're setting intentions, when we're consciously setting intentions, it's because we're like, okay, well, I really want to, sometimes it's a personal thing. And we say, I really want to overcome this. I really want to be better with this, that kind of thing. Or it's like, you know what? I really want to, it can be something more physically based. It can be like, oh, my intention is to go to Europe. My intention, things like this. And it's like, okay, you set that intention, and I think really we're more so talking about like the personal intentions that we're setting, because that's really the most fruitful staging ground for all of what we do. So we set that intention, and intention takes us there. It takes us into that arena, and which is something we're like, okay, well, we set these things because we don't really know what that's like. It's like, I want to have more courage, right? Well, that's because you don't know what it's like to feel like you have courage. You know, like that's really kind of what's underneath the whole thing. So you're like, all right, well, so now you're being brought into that territory because you're like, I don't know this. Now you're brought into that unknown. And if we have an expectation of what that was supposed to look like, we're going to be brought into this place and be like, what the hell is this?
Yes.
What the hell is this? What's going on here? Right? And start, kicking up dust and guffawing about all of this stuff. And meanwhile, intention is sitting there being like, you're here. I have brought you here.
Yeah.
You're there right now. And you're like, what? Yes. No. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's like, just look. Mm-hmm. Look around you right now. Become present and trust that this is happening. Your intention is actually being brought into light right now. But without release of how we think that's supposed to happen, a certain idea of outcome, because all of those ideas we have about how this is going to go or how we would like it to go, yada, 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 that's all based on past experiences. That's all based on something that we already know. So how can we possibly learn? How can we possibly achieve that intention? Or not necessarily how, but why would we think that we're going to learn this thing through something we already know? How can you possibly learn what you already know?
Yeah.
That's my thing, right?
I think you bring up an interesting point, because what we know feels safe, feels comfortable, feels controlled, and ultimately, because of those things, feels relatively pleasurable to us. And so I think often when we're looking to get something with intention, something new, something to build to ourselves, we are hoping and trying to game the system to be like, I want a comfortable, joyful, easy experience of this. And it's like, well, if you need courage to do what you're doing, you might, and you need courage, you might have the intention to call in scary or painful things into your life because you know that you need to face it. And so here's how I got through my fearful thing, mm-hmm. is if I have enough purpose, enough why, enough meaning, enough reason, it makes sense to face my fears. And the meaning is what gets me through, is what carries the intention through the uncomfortable period. And so this is where intention kind of takes you, where it becomes so much about purpose and meaning, because it's like, I want this thing, but the only way to get it is to go through something painful or something difficult or uncomfortable. And I think where people run into trouble is they go, well, I want to get the thing, but I don't want to feel the pain. And this is the whole law of success, or the law of building anything is temporary pain for long-term gain. And we all know this, but it's intention will sometimes give you temporary pain for long-term gain. So if you judge the experience of intention, and you also judge the outcomes of intention, you don't allow intention to serve you. And I think intention's this gift you give to yourself. You say, I want this thing, and then you say, I know why I want it. I have enough purpose and meaning and connection to why I need it and how it'll serve me. And then what the world gives you, you use the world, or you use your experience to back filter and help you to get it. Because look, if you're not going to be courageous, I knew this is myself. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to be courageous, if you're not going to face these fears, then you're not going to be able to have what you want. You know this. Mm-hmm. This job of being a leader, of building this thing, of doing this thing requires courage, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So right now you're scared. So until you remove the fear, so either you remove the fear or you build the courage.
Right.
And so I said, okay, well, I want the courage. And then the courage, I call into my life, or I find situations which are scary and I build the courage, or I run away from it. But I think if you still have the intention, you just kind of keep running back to the same problem. So, I think when you have an intention, for example, let's just kind of take something. You want to be a famous musician.
Yeah.
Well, what does that require? You already know. I mean, we don't have to tell you. You already know in your heart, well, that requires being good at this instrument, being good at singing, being good at whatever. This means publicly marketing myself. This means recording something. Now, my question to you is, you want this thing. Now, what are the things in you that you feel are missing? Now, when you ask for this intention to be this musician, the universe is going to go like, look, you know you're missing this inside you, so let's give you this so you can overcome that. Because you are constantly, whether you want to call it the universe or whether you want to call it your own magnetism, you're always serving yourself. And in some ways, intention gets you to look for things that you need so it can give you what you want. But it will not look the way you think it'll look, because all we see is the person holding the award or on stage. We don't see the trials and tribulations they had to go through to hold the award and get on stage. And intention is you're willing to go through the trials and tribulations because you have enough purpose. And it might not be to hold the reward and get on stage, but more to be that person, because, again, we also don't necessarily control those outcomes. But we'll maybe get into that more as we go. Right?
Yeah, and I think you bring back up something that we've kind of maybe glossed over a little bit up to this point.
Yeah.
But the importance of vision, the importance of being connected to that why you're doing what you're doing. You know, is an important thing before you set out on any endeavor that's going to require time and effort. You know, this is an important thing to take a look at, you know, because we want to be coming from the right place, because if we're not coming from the right place, then like within ourselves, like not as an objective right or wrong, this is a very subjective per person kind of thing, like what is right for you, and knowing what is the place that this intention is coming from. And you brought this up earlier before we started recording, which was like, if you know that question, maybe you've heard it before, but that question of, well, if you knew that you were never going to get fame, fortune, major success from doing this, would you still do it? You know, would that still be something you do? That's an important question to ask yourselves before we set out on anything, because if the answer is no, then maybe your heart lies somewhere else. Maybe the exploration is to continue on at this point for you as to what your purpose is. Because if the answer is no, that means that there's something that you're just trying to get from it.
Well, you know what? The other thing too is you bring up a great point, because here's the thing: is when you're trying to get something, it's a funny conundrum that we face, because like when you're trying to get something or get somewhere or accomplish something, this is my belief. People are trying to get or accomplish or do something because they believe when they get there or accomplish it or do it, then they can be who they want to be. But what they don't realize is that to get and accomplish and all of that, you need to actually be that person first. Mm-hmm. And so this is the problem, and this is why I feel people chase their tails a lot, because they think that the goal will allow them to be who they want to be. Like, once I'm a millionaire, then I can do this. Once my business is up and running, then I can do this. Once I'm get my first acting role, then I can be this way. No. You can be that way right now. That's the law of presence. That's the law of vision and presence in action together. And if you were being and living as that right now, and you didn't need some excuse to allow yourself to do it, you could actually have the thing. And I think people are constantly like chasing something, because you can only have many things in life once you have already become them. Like, you don't get them to become them. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And so, like, the law of intention is actually saying, if you intend, the best way to do it is be who you need to be right now, and then take action, and that will actually get you what you want. Mm-hmm. But if you try to take action without being it, you actually will almost never get what you want.
Yeah.
And like, I had to be courageous to find courage. It's not like I got courage and then I'm courageous. It's like I had to become someone of courage. And then I go, one moment I'm like, oh, this is what courage is.
Right.
This is courage.
Yeah.
I'm courageous. Oh shit, I've already been being courageous.
Yeah.
But it doesn't like I got courageous and then became courageous. It's like I became courageous and then you know, like I had a call with someone and they said, "You're the most courageous person I know." And I'm like, I don't know if I'm that courageous. But honestly, it's cool that you see that, because that was something I really wanted to build in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I'm sure there's way more courageous people than me. Don't get me wrong. But there's a certain amount of courage that I built, and it comes by allowing myself to be. Yeah.
Well, everyone has in their own sort of way.
Yes.
Something that you're
relative.
Something that you're touching on, we didn't even talk about before, but you know, the authenticity and truth is so important with our intention. And this is so like to kind of tie this thread together, vision, the big why of what we're doing, and making sure that's coming from the right place. And if you want, you can listen to some of our past podcasts. We did one on vision, one of our first ones on finding your path. I think that was like episode 1.
Yeah.
Go and check that one out for sure. We explore a lot of that. But this is partially why this is so important, because without that foundation, the intentions you're setting are based on bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, like and they're not gonna take you into I would say a fulfilling path to take. So being truthful, getting honest with ourselves, and that is part of what that question of like, would you still pursue this, or would you want to pursue this if you knew that you were not going to get fame, fortune, glory, all that kind of stuff out of it? Would you still do it? Not to say that, you know, and that's not to say that those things would not happen and that there's anything wrong with those things. There's not. And it's not to say that you wouldn't, you know, be able to make a living at something like that. But if there were those kinds of things, if you just knew that that wouldn't happen, if that's a game changer for you, if that's a stop and point of no return, then the intention that's behind that sort of vision, the intention that's behind that path is based on some kind of need that's ultimately going to destroy you. You know?
Ooh. Heavy drop. It's
I know that was kind of dramatic.
But it is, it is, because like the problem is, people who chase the result tend to never get the result. And it's kind of sad, you know, like, and we can all see this. Like, how many people do you know, especially if you're in any type of arts that require passion and drive, how many people do you know with broken dreams? You know, and when I went down to LA and I was down there during pilot season, so many actors came across the country, came across the world to be there. And I was meeting people all over, and I was meeting literally people who are movie stars to people who are just trying to get a break. And man, some of the people who were like, they'd even been there for years, and just the heartbreak, it was breaking my heart to see them like just feeling so like broken, because like they literally, so many people came there because they believed that they were special and they would be chosen and they would be famous. And now they're there and they don't really love acting, but they were there to like hopefully get a break. And you can just see this kind of like, they're going to have to go back to their families, or they're just going to live it out there, and they're broken, right? And so if you're in that stage, listen, I felt heartbreak. I know this feeling. Yeah. But wherever you are, first of all, it's not over. It's not over.
This is leading to whatever's next.
Yeah. But you do need to accept that you've been chasing a result. And instead, I think what Evan and I are suggesting is, if you make your intention more about how you're being and how you're doing and living, the results will come. But if you chase the result, they kind of like, they run away. You know? Yeah.
And this is a big part. So like setting some more stuff on how, like, okay, so what's a good intention? How do you set an intention? Because so much of it is like people are setting intentions that are very result and goal oriented, or I want to get something.
Can I rephrase it and say, like, we can call, let's classify this: good intention, bad intention, healthy intention, unhealthy intention.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So this is
Fair
more,
enough.
you're talking about more of a healthy intention.
Yeah. So what are healthy intentions?
Because, well, a good intention, I would say, is like to build something of value, to make good in the world, and the bad intention would be to destroy or hurt something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a healthy intention is more about how you're experiencing your intention, or unhealthy is how you're experiencing it.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like I've had intention presented to me in the way that like the way to set an intention is based on and let's see if I can navigate this. So the way to do that is that you set an intention that is something that is active at all points in time. That it doesn't matter what's going on around you. That intention is something that you actually have some say in the whole process. So it's like, I work with actors, I teach actors, and for me to say, it's like, oh, well, I want to be, I don't know, I want to be awarded the best acting teacher in the city, right? Like that's my intention. I want to be the best, like revered as the best, and that's a very extreme,
and awards,
exactly, and trophies,
and they talk about you online, and someone says, Evan C. Schulte, best teacher ever.
And they're throwing like flower petals at me everywhere I go. And, everyone at the Oscars is thanking me.
Yeah. Because they all won Oscars because you're the best teacher in the world. Yeah.
So that's a very extreme
yeah.
of things. So it's like I can set an intention there. Well, there's so many problems with that. Like it's almost like I have so little control over that outcome and about achieving that. And anything that doesn't fall in line with that is going to be a failure.
Right. And even if you did achieve it, to maintain it and keep it forever.
It's like it's this constant, like now you're in this constant fear of being, taken over. So like obviously this is just a massive ego game that's going on here.
Totally.
As opposed to if I set an intention for myself as a teacher, it's like my intention is to ignite and excite and inspire and empower as many people who I can in the craft of acting. And that is something that I can actually, even that might still be a little bit more result oriented, but
I'd say like that's actually a good start, because you're looking at like what's the immediate impact I can see in the present moment, because you could see if you're igniting someone, you could see if this is happening. And then the other thing too is, all I would add to that is say like how you're being this teacher, because
yes,
like you might be the best teacher in the world, and you're giving us all the power because we'd have to acknowledge you as the best teacher. But if you just decide to be it, you can decide if you're being the best teacher you can be, right? And also, if you're being it but comparing yourself to everyone else, that's a problem for you, not us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because this is your journey, your experience.
Yeah.
But if you're being it and you're complete and you're content, you're like, I'm bringing everything to this, and I'm, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's exact. You've hit it perfectly, which is like, what am I bringing to this? What are you bringing to the intention?
Yes.
Like that's really like, and what can you bring to this intention? Like that's really, it's an active thing. It's not a get thing. It's an active thing, and it's active right now. And from the moment that you set it, that's a good intention, or that's a healthy intention. Yes. Is one that were, so yeah, even that one example I gave, that was kind of getting more in the right territory. Yeah. Maybe that was good that I kind of put that. So it's like we've gone from this one extreme. Now it's like, okay, well, I can't even, because I'm realizing now, it's like, well, I can't guarantee that I'm going to inspire people. That's still all a result-oriented thing. But I can have say, it's like, well, my intention is to show up as fully, completely, attentively, and as passionately as possible for every actor who steps in my door.
That's awesome.
I have
you have total control.
I have control over that.
Totally.
That is something that, like, you know what? Yeah, I can show up for that, and
And-
I can bring that.
And it's present. Like if we take your first example, and thanks for sharing that, because I mean, I think that's good, for me to hear and for everybody to hear. But you started out from this very external thing, which basically people had to grant you or bestow upon you.
Yeah.
And it was also so far in the future. It was like one day I hope to, when
Yeah.
I'm about to die,
Yeah,
be
and
the best. And I'll have this moment of happiness. And it's like, why do you have to wait for that? Why don't you just have that now? And then you went,
Yeah.
well, I could impact people. And that's also, I think, a part of it. But then you got it right down to the core in this last one, because you said, like, I'm going to show up. And this is in the present moment based on a vision of how you want to be. And like that, no one out here decides whether you do that. You decide whether you do that.
Yeah.
But all the other ones, like if you do that and then I'm like unaffected, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not showing up, right? Like your last one, showing up, if in the effect is that you affect me with your acting and you inspire or fire me up, or what you kind of ignite me, then that's a great benefit of your intention, a bonus of your intention. But I think like you got to start from that how you're showing up place, and then it leads to these external things.
Yes.
Right? Because
and
that's
I think
the purpose.
that's a big thing. That
Yeah.
I like that showing up, how you show up is.
You said it. It was great.
That's how that's really an idea to keep in mind for when you're setting an intention. Is does it inform how you show up now in your life and in what you do? And it's almost actually like, that was almost kind of a good exercise just for my own self. It's like, you set that intention. It's like, okay, do it. That's wonderful. That's kind of like a big picture. It's like but there is a little or a lot of egotism involved in that. But you set this big thing. It's like, well, my intention is I want to be, this big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And then you bring, it's like, okay, great. So now let's take that to the next step. It's like, okay, so, but what is it that you do? What is it that you actually want to do for people? What's kind of the value that you want to give for people? It's like, okay, great. So now we have that kind of result. And now that's a part of the vision, right? Because there's nothing, I don't want to say that there's anything entirely wrong with those things of being like, the recognition, and then, having the impact on people and getting people, a certain result. It's not a completely negative thing, but it's kind of an attitude from our part and our approach. So it's like, you start from this thing, it's like, okay, that's the big thing. Now we bring it to, okay, that's what we're kind of, our intention is on a more of a ground level kind of thing. And now what's the intention that we set that will potentially facilitate those things? What is the person that we need to show up as? Like, what is that person's intention? And that has everything to do with how you show up.
I'm going to go back to this quote, and you said this earlier, and I was like, we need to say this on the podcast. You said, intention is a vehicle into the unknown. It's a being into the unknown. And I think like that was such a great way to put it. I mean, your intention is your vehicle. It's your beingness. And I think like what you did in that exercise was probably how most of us would actually apply the law of intention. Like I can relate to that. It's like, I want to, win an Oscar and do this and whatever, right? So you start out on this very external, totally out of control goal that come on, guys, we all feel powerless to that, but we're like secretly like, I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
And the thing is like,
and you might do it. That's the thing. Like, you might.
No. And that's fine. You do it or you don't, whatever. But you have the intention. Okay, I want that. And then it's okay. Well, what could I do to that? Well, I need to do this film. I need to do these shows. I need to audition a lot, blah, 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 whatever, or make my own film or whatever your thing is. But then if you take it back to, you took it 3 layers deep. It became, I want this very far out external goal that isn't happening right now, to a more present, I want to impact other people. And other people right now will give me that response, to I'm going to show up and be right now the person that could get that response. And through those responses or outcomes could generate the opportunities to the point where they would get the Oscar. But if people skip that, they don't go deep, if they just try and chase the third, like that really far out thing, without affecting people and doing the necessary actions, or being, most importantly, who they need to be, that's why you don't ever really have a chance at the Oscar or whatever your big goal is, whatever it might be. And I think like what we're really discovering on this call or on this chat is like saying, I say call because I talk to so many people on the phone across the world these days. What we're talking about on this call, but anyway, is this vehicle.
Yeah.
You are driving the car right now, however you want to look at it. This is way of the artist. You're on your way right now. Like, you may arrive somewhere at some point, but you will be there when you're there, and you are right here right now. So like, if your goal was all about, I want to be the best acting teacher, like what if you achieved that at 98 and then died the next day? Like, that sucks. You got one day of like, I'm the best, and then
Totally. And the thing is, like, in truth, like our lives are a constant. There's never arriving. There is arriving, but it's always met with departing.
Yes.
Like, our lives are constant departures and arrivals.
Yeah.
And there's never just arriving. Like, that's just not how the world works. It's not how life works. Like, we're constantly in motion. We're constantly in movement. And it's about really kind of moving with that. And so this is the thing with setting healthy intentions that are something that are actable, that are about the way that we can be in the world, about being more of the kind of people that we want to be. And we can apply this in all kinds of areas of our life. We set these intentions of this is the kind of person that I want to be. Like, I just kind of want to do this experiment. I want to roll through this one more time.
Sure.
You're saying like, okay, so you're an actor. And I'm just using an actor as an example because it's kind of like, again, there's lots of extremes that go on there, from like, big $20 million picture A-lister to like, holy shit.
I want to get my first role.
Yeah. And I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment with 4 other people.
One bedroom, bachelor suite.
Yeah, bachelor suite with 4 other people.
Alleyway, come on, man. We can go pretty low.
Yeah, we can go pretty low. I'm trying to keep this within like, a certain realm. But anyhow, so it's like the intention is like, well, I want to be an Oscar-winning actor. Okay, great. You have no control over that. So let's bring that down. So what's your intention? It's like, okay, well, my intention is to, I want to book like 3 major roles in the next year, right? And it's like, okay, again, you don't have control over that, right? So let's now dial this back. Now, what is an intention that could that you can be, that you can show up as, that could potentially facilitate those things? Mm-hmm. Who is that person? And so now the intention is like, okay, my intention is to show up as a present, professional, like well-mannered, like pro, basically. Like, that's my intention. It's like I to always show up with my shit together. That's now, okay, all right, now we're talking. Now that's an intention that you can live by. Mm-hmm. That's an intention that you've got some say in, right? So I don't know. I'm just kind of like enjoying this. This was a total happy accident as what's his name? The painter. Oh, Bob Ross. There are no mistakes.
Bob Ross,
no mistakes, only happy accidents. But no, it's like, you start out and you just bring this back into who you can be. Yeah. As an intention. But the thing is, it's still, I'm realizing it's still like kind of a good exercise, because it's like, all right, yeah, like we've still got achievements there.
Yeah.
But like, which is wonderful. We still got all of these goals, but now we're bringing it just back into a thing that you can be now. Something that's actually that you can actually take action on, as opposed to, well, I'm waiting for this thing to happen. It's like your intention is, it doesn't matter. That's something that's going to apply to you through all of those steps. Through those, you booked three major roles that year. And you know what? Now you're you've been nominated for something, that's still with you. Mm-hmm. That intention hasn't left you. You've carried that with you all the way.
And you carry it till the end of your career, and you enjoy every moment of being and living in it, because it becomes your way of being. I'll share a story. Okay, so I was in school, in high school, right? And I failed grade 8 in social studies. I didn't fail the whole year. I failed social studies. I had to go to summer school. Sucked. Missed summer, but I had to do a social studies summer school. And in that summer school, I got 98% on my thing, because the reason why was because there's no way that I'm repeating a year. So I was just like, I'm doing my work, and I got 98%. So I knew that it was possible to get good grades. It was summer school. It was a little easier probably, but at the same time, I made sure I did all my homework. I did my thing. Then grade 9, I just skated by through school. Mostly C minuses, C's, like a B or an A in gym, because I was an athlete, but that was like it. And then at the end of grade 9, I had a friend, and he was a A student. Like he was rock star in school as far as grades go. And he said, there's no way you could get grades like that or whatever. And it really pissed me off.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, there was some other ulterior motives. I really wanted to get my dad's attention, because my parents had just split up, and he was busy and my mom was busy, and I was just neglected.
Yeah.
And I figured, if I get good grades, people will pay attention to me. And also I'm going to prove this guy wrong, because I can't get good grades.
As a bonus.
Yeah. Grade 10, I learned this concept, which was called, there was these concepts we were presented in career and personal planning. And one of the concepts was mentalities. And do you have a take care of business mentality? And I decided I have a take care of business mentality. Whenever I get work, whenever I get anything that's a major thing that needs to get done, any homework, anything, I'm going to do it day one. I'm going to come home straight from school, and I'm going to do my homework immediately, and then I'm going to enjoy the rest of the day. What I used to do was either wait till the end of the day and maybe not complete my homework or whatever, or I just run out of time and then, whatever. So I did this for a year. I turned into an A student. They gave me a scholarship money every single term, all the way to 4 terms out of the end of the year. A kid approached me at the end of the year. He said, "How'd you do it?" I'll tell you how I did it. I didn't tell this kid this, but this is how I did it. I just decided who I was going to be. I was going to be somebody that took care of business. If you gave me something, consider it done. Don't just consider it done immediately, as fast as it can be done. If we had a class project, I did it day one. And then for the next 3 weeks, I just relaxed. It was an incredible experience. It got me into the top tier university in my country. That's the mentality. And it was simply a way of being. Now you got to understand, I was a failing student that went from failing to university quality, like scholarship money, based on how I was being. If I was chasing grades, that's not telling me how to be. The grades were the result of being and showing up a certain way. And so, I went and I did that. I mean, that's basically the thing that I think people need to understand. I had this intention, get good grades. But really, where it worked was I had the intention of be somebody who takes care of business.
Yeah.
That was the way I was being.
Yeah, because the thing is you want good grades.
Right.
But in order to get the good grades, you need to... There's a whole other level of things that you need to do in order for that to enter into the equation, in order for you to even be walking in that territory, essentially, which is really what intention does. It's these things are in this territory, but the intention is the thing that brings us into the area where we can even wander around it.
And I think the get good grades is like the goal, the objective.
Yeah.
But the intention is, and this is the point I really want to hammer home, the intention is the way of being, the way of showing up.
Yeah. Which,
when you shared your whole thing of I have a goal of being the best teacher, and I think it's awesome. I think we should all aspire to be the best. But the thing is that that's where goals let us down. That's where these things let us down, because intention is what gets us goals. And the law of intention is, if you're not achieving your goals, apply the law of intention, which is the intention to be and do and show up in life a certain way. based on how you know you need to show up. You know, and I knew getting good grades meant, I just knew it. I knew take care of business. Like, I'm not completing homework. I'm not studying. Like, these are the missing resources. Just begin to be and do the guy that does that. And then sure enough, I started getting A's and everything. And it was like, it wasn't really that difficult. It wasn't like it was and I think that some people, they think they're dumb because like they get bad grades. And it's like, you're not dumb. You probably just aren't doing the work. That's probably what's happening. Like, it's like the difference between like, and this is another problem. And I just want to kind of play this into intention as well, because who you think you are is more often the problem and the limitation between you achieving your goals than anything else. And like what I learned when I just applied myself is like, hey, I'm actually a smart kid. Because up until then, I just thought I kind of thought I was maybe not that smart.
Yeah.
You know, I thought maybe I was kind of dumb. Maybe I was a little slow, you know, because I like didn't do well at school. But I like recognized, I'm like, I just don't do work. Let's see what happens if I do work.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it turned me into an A student. Does that make me smart? I don't know. But it definitely got me the grades.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure like there's, you know, so many, like I'm just thinking of like little things just popping into my mind of times in my life where, and you, something that you didn't necessarily directly mention, but like, you know, these intentions came out of some level of importance, of a personal meaning to you.
Yeah.
Even if they were kind of, you know, coming out of
well, Kier, I was just going to say, it's like why are you doing this? I wanted to prove my friend wrong, and I wanted to get my dad's attention.
And it was definitely a motivator, but
Right.
it was like, and you know, like that kind of thing will only take you so far.
Right.
But for a time, like it was effective, right? There was an intention behind it. Like there was an intention. It's just like, my intention is to,
Yeah.
you know, like to prove this wrong and like, and you know, make my dad proud or whatever. And then you bring that back. It's like, okay, so now what can you actually do? It's like, well, my intention is to be the guy that takes care of business. Right. And all of the things that you kind of associate with that. And that turns into all of these kinds of behaviors, ways that you go about living your life and your perspectives on things. But there was a meaning to what was behind it. A meaning that was very, very real.
And deeper than I want to make my dad proud and I want to prove this guy wrong. There's a deeper meaning, which is actually something I want to do for myself, which hasn't been identified yet in this conversation, which is, I mean, you know, probably deep down, if I'm really honest and I want to be vulnerable, like here, I'll probably say like, I felt like I wasn't good enough and didn't matter. And I wanted to feel like I mattered. I wanted to feel like I was enough. And so like, maybe misguided, maybe a place from lack, but when I go down and I think about all the work I did and how I put certain things off, and I heard other kids outside my window playing and talking and hanging out, and I was inside doing work, my meaning of like, I want to feel valuable, I want to feel important, was deeper than the desire to hang out with them in that present moment, which would have felt good and would have been good. And I think like, this is where real drive comes from, in the meaning, in that deeper seated thing. You know, now, like, and just to kind of carry the story forward, I'm older now. I don't necessarily have a drive to be good enough anymore or to be valuable, although it does pop up every now and then. But it's more now from a different place of meaning. It's you know, I would say like, for me, it's more about, I want to feel a certain amount of fulfillment in my expression of myself. I want to kind of experience more of myself. That's just where I've evolved to, you know, in my journey. But in my initial stage, it was just like, I just wanted to feel valuable and feel good enough. But I think at the bottom line, your why is the thing that we don't always dive into. We don't get down that deep. Like, why do you want the Oscar? You know?
It's
like,
a bit of a
why?
murkier territory to
hard,
dive into. Yeah. And
it takes vulnerability.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a shifty territory as well, because the why, as I don't know if we've talked about it on this one. Maybe we did that when we were the B&E podcast.
Yeah.
But the why is really kind of like is more of a feeling than a logical thing. The why is always kind of this semi-intangible kind of thing, you know? You kind of get brought to a point where you go, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
because this, right? And that's usually when you're getting onto it. But, you know, it's I love what you just said about, you know, like, man, what a beautiful intention for people to set for themselves. And I think a lot of people, I can touch on, like, relate to that. It's like, well, what if you set the intention to act like a person who mattered in the world? You know, what if you just in your life you just, you know what, my intention is just to act like a person who actually matters.
Yeah, how would that change your life?
How would that change your life?
If you showed up to your life like you mattered, because, you know, this was a big thing for me actually in a lot of my life. I remember being like, oh, if I don't show up to that party, no one's really going to care. It's not going to make a difference. And I remember I had this moment. I think someone said, like, why weren't you at my party, or why weren't you here, or why didn't you show up, or something? And I was like, fuck, they noticed. And you know, that had happened a few times, but then I realized it actually makes a difference whether I'm there or not. Even though there's maybe hundreds or even sometimes thousands of people at this event,
yeah,
my presence actually made a difference on someone's life. And so after that point, I decided to start showing up. Or if I was thinking, like, I don't know if I want to go, being like, well, will it make a difference if I do? And then often that would drive me enough to start to show up to things. Because, like, I think it's Woody Allen who says, like 85 or 95% of the job is showing up, which is so true. If you're not there, it can't happen. So like the other thing is like, I think a lot of the time people don't think they matter, so they don't show up. And then like 95% of the job was just be there, you know?
Yeah.
Like just be, like literally it comes back to that word, be there. You have to be presently there.
Yeah. And I totally get, like, there's so much of that quote is like, I can, you know, I tell actors about that all the time. It's just like the foundation of your acting is how fully you are here. You know, it's not just about, being there, like literally, that's kind of obvious. You got to be there to do the job. But it's just like, how much can you be here? How much can you just show up with your entire being?
Right.
You know, and let that out. Just let that sit there in whatever's happening. You know, like that's the crux of it.
And I think like what your point is like, it doesn't have to be hard to bring more of yourself to the table. And I think the way that it becomes easier is you just find a deeper meaning for why you're doing stuff, a deeper sense of purpose and drive, you know, like for me, when I was younger, I mean, I achieved certain things just based on trying to prove I was valuable or enough. And you know what? It was enough to drive me to do certain things that built a lot of value and did some good things. Do I want to drive myself from that place? No, but I think sometimes having a why, you know, regardless of where it comes from, is more honest and more in integrity with what will actually help you do what you need to do. And if you're identifying, and I'll share this with people, like if you have a similar struggle to me where you don't feel valuable enough at times or you feel like you're not good enough, don't make yourself wrong for that. That's okay. I mean, you know, like if I was talking to my younger self right now, I'd say like, yeah, so what? You don't feel good enough. You don't feel like you're valuable. That's okay. And that's driving and you want to prove that. Great. And you don't necessarily see a deeper reason other than that to go do what you're doing. That's okay. You know, but at some point, you know, as you go and do more and be more, you might actually realize you are valuable and you are enough, and then that will be gone. But if you make yourself wrong, I mean, how did I overcome being valuable and being enough? I basically just started showing up and I started to realize, hey, I'm pretty valuable. Hey, I'm more than enough. What? But when you're young, you don't have context for that yet. You don't realize the impact you're having on people's lives yet. So it's natural for a young person and anybody really at any age, if you haven't shown up yet, to just feel like, hey, I'm not valuable, I'm not enough, because you haven't experienced yourself being valuable yet. And when you give yourself that opportunity and you experience yourself being valuable and you experience yourself being enough, more than enough, those things will just go away. And then you'll replace it with something new, you know? And so like, I would say like, if that's what's driving you right now, that's fine. It's totally cool. It's very natural, I think. I think many people can relate to that, you know? And I think like the other thing, the law of intention doesn't judge either. It doesn't say like, you're bad or wrong for like wanting this. It's like, The law of intention is like, great, go out and do it. And then let's see what happens. It's an experiment. You have an intention to go out and try something and see what happens. Just like I stuck up my hand as a little kid. And then you find out what happens. And then you go, okay, great.
Yeah, like intention is a movement.
Yeah.
Really. Like intention is just a movement. It's not telling you what to see, what to find. It's just like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
The rest is up to you. Let's go.
And we'll see what we find this way. Mm-hmm. And you don't like that journey down that way, you go down a different road, you know? I mean...
But your intention is being answered.
Yeah.
You know, and you might not believe it. You might think that's a bunch of hocus pocus nonsense. Woo-woo hocus pocus nonsense. But I'm telling you, the power of intention, if you dare to try this thing out, you know, you'll start to see some shit like happen in your life, you know, and again, it's like it's I'm sure you can relate to a moment in your life where maybe it came out as like I will never again, or this, it's like I am going to this, like it's just there was a moment you made a decision in your mind that this was going to be the way that something was going to go down, and things went down that way, you know, or that's the direction that things ended up taking. Like intention is such a powerful thing. It shifts our inner world. It shifts our outer world. Like it's an incredibly powerful law to be working with.
And I think it's also like not just powerful, like it is powerful, it's vital to you achieving anything or really like building anything that is of mindful, conscious awareness. Like if you're not like applying intention with mindfulness and awareness, like you're kind of like just randomly going to get what you're going to get. So like, you know, it's up to you to focus it.
Can't believe we're just getting to this point right now.
We're going to have to do another one on this because like it's such a deep topic because I think everybody can relate to this. And I mean, obviously we can because we're talking about it endlessly, but like we all have goals, we all have dreams, we all have desires. And like the law of intention is vital to all of that. And so I think it's like one of those topics where we've kind of gone deep, but we could probably even go a lot deeper with this, you know? And maybe we'll just touch back into it and do an intention part 2.0, you know, or whatever. Intention plus.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're drinking beer. What do you think of it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been drinking this one for a little bit here.
Yeah, this is good.
And man, this is fantastic. This is one of my like, this is one of the kind of you know, sometimes not a lot of beers.
This is awesome. Yeah, no, go ahead. Anytime.
Not a lot of beers really make me stop for a second and take notice and go, what the hell is this? You know, I drink a lot of great beers. We drink a lot of great beers on here. And you go, yeah, that was good. That was wonderful in this. But this one is one that when I first took a sip of it, I went, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this? Because this is something fantastic. And now people are wondering, what the hell is this?
Yeah, by the way, this isn't an ad. We just drink beers on the podcast, and we like to share what we're drinking because we support craft breweries.
Yes, as you should as well if you are a enjoyer of beers. So this one is a collaboration beer from two terrific breweries here in the Greater Vancouver area. Yeah. So this one is a collaboration between Moody Ales and Fuggles and Warlock. That's one of my favorite names of that there is. And this one is called Pears and White Satin. It's an Imperial Pear Kolsch, and it's 7%.
Yeah.
So
you won't really notice it.
You won't really notice it. It will
until it hits you.
Sneak up on you.
You know what I like about this is like the Kolsch part of it is like this nice kind of light beer with a little bit of flavor, but that pear infusion they did is so like nicely balanced that it gives it this like just incredible flavor, you know?
It's like, do you want to drink a really strong beer in the summer this is your go-to.
Yeah.
It's like, because you're like, oh yeah, this tastes like the summer. You got the pear in there. It's kind of refreshing, but then at the same time, it's got some kick to it.
Yeah. And it's like really well balanced. So I've been enjoying it.
That's a winner.
Okay, so we covered a lot of stuff. I mean, let's maybe give some takeaways we can leave this with for people. I'll begin and you finish. What I want to say is this. You have some goals. You have some things that you want in life. Regardless of what it is, check in with your intention. And your intention is going to be how you're being and what you're doing right now in this moment. Something that you can just show up as. And as Evan had pointed out, and I love this quote, I'm going to use this, as I share this idea with other people. But your intention is a vehicle into the unknown. And we didn't really get into the unknown part of it, but like the unknown part of it is like, the things that we're trying to control and the outcomes or results we're trying to get, but we don't know if they'll work out. Like the unknown doesn't necessarily mean it's going to look like the way you think it's going to look. But if you have the intention, trust that the unknown is going to work out the way it needs to work out. And it's going to be what it needs to be. All you can do with the law of intention is right now, just be who you need to be. Don't worry about what the result is going to be. It's going to be what it's going to be. But right now you can control what you're going to be. And that's what I'd leave people with.
Well, you sure didn't leave me with a lot of things.
Come on, man. We got a whole nother talk on this.
As far as a wrap up, yeah, like I'm just going to echo all of that stuff. Like it's just, set your intentions by the person that you want to show up as. That's ultimately where you want to get to. Go through this sort of accidental exercise that we stumbled upon, where it's like, you start from this thing, and it's like, if that thing, you just keep working back to the point where it becomes like, oh, this is something that I do, as opposed to this is something that someone else has to give me.
Right.
Keep working back until you get to that point, because that is, because I don't want anybody to get the idea that we think there's anything wrong with, money or fame and glory and all of that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with all of that kind of stuff. Like it's totally fine. But there's a place where that all begins. And there's a place where we become in that whole thing. So it's really about what is that thing that we become, that might become a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the thing that we're going to find our actual fulfillment in. So no matter what stage you're at, no matter whether these things are coming to pass or not, you know what you're doing, you know who you are being, and that's something that you're proud of, no matter what, because you can always be proud of how you show up.
Yeah. And no matter how hard life gets, you can always be the kind of person that you want to be. And I mean, just to echo what you said, because it needs to be said, is that like totally make money, get success, win awards. My thing is just don't wait till you get that to be who you want to be. Be who you want to be now. And then when you get it, continue to be who you want to be. But don't wait for that to give you permission, Yeah. And ironically, those things will probably come because you're being who you need to be.
Mm-hmm. Because things like you'll get those things and you go, it's like, yeah, that was great, but before was great too. Thanks for listening to the show. If you got something out of this, if you feel it improved your life or your journey in any way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode. You can also support us on Patreon, where we have tons of great bonuses. You are the ones that make the show possible and help us to thrive. Thank you for joining us.